Now, cultures collide, and one of the primary reasons they collide is because of languages that they use. Sooner or later, vision and culture are going to collide. That's just inevitable. And it might be the business side is colliding with the technology side. Uh, Finance might be colliding with the support side. It could be anything. Then flow leads with vision, and we do this differently than a lot of other companies would do that. We're going to go through that. And then we look at servant leaders versus traditional bosses. This is one example of where business and technology tend to collide. And on the business side, they're trying to look at things like governance and leadership and how do you integrate agile into that. And the business side tends to speak one language, and the technology side tends to speak another. And the technology side has come up the curve relatively quickly on agile, borrowing a lot of their principles from lean manufacturing. And so, in that sense, it shouldn't be that foreign to the business team members. But this is one of the key areas in which we have a collision. And that collision is primarily due to the different languages that they use when they're trying to communicate to each other. With flow and the flow leadership framework, flow leads with vision. And so in flow on the business side, we use cascading vision, cascading the VSPT from the executive to senior management, portfolio to program, program to project, project to team, team to individual. And we're also going to talk about the power of the one thing in just a bit. And then most companies are to some extent able to cascade their vision throughout the organization. Where it becomes really difficult is getting a feedback loop and a link back between the individual back to the team level back to the project level if projects are used, then to the next level up behind it, and so on. And so we have a video, and I'll put the link for that one as well into the library that we have for this video series on learning how to use flow. On the scaling side, technology looks a lot at scaling, which is a very tool set view. I go into the difference between tool set and mindset thinking in the transformation slide deck that I've done for the training. So you'll want to take a look at that. But here we have safe, less, Scrum at scale, whatever. That's what they're trying to do for scaling. And they're trying to scale on top of what they're doing at the team level with Scrum, Kanban, XP, Scrumban, hybrids, whatever. And so if you're not tying all of those things down below to a vision and a leadership framework up above, you're going to end up with a lot of friction and a lot of conflict in your organization. I wanted to include a quick pictorial of the difference between servant leaders and traditional bosses or managers. A leader is going to be out there in the front pulling with the team, and vision is going to pull everybody along as they're trying to move the, in this case, a boat over a bunch of logs that they're rolling down to the water. Now, in the traditional setup, you've got a boss who is sitting on top of the load adding to the load, and it's only the boss that has the vision. And the team, their job is to pull. So again, it comes down to, does your walk match your talk? If you're a leader, you're going to be out front showing the way. If you're only a boss or a manager, you're just going to be delegating, telling people what to do, and even potentially getting into micromanagement of the team. It's very much an X versus Y theory of leadership. It's usually never a question of whether or not vision and culture are going to collide. It's somewhat inevitable, and as we discussed, a lot of times it will happen between the business side and technology side, and they think that they're speaking the same language and they think that they're communicating the same thing, but that's definitely not necessarily the case. We looked at how to correct that a little bit because flow leads with vision, and as we shared in one of the other sections and videos, that you can use vision for conflict resolution. And as I've probably already stated, flow is a leadership framework that sits above all of these other frameworks, whether it's a scaled agile framework or at the program level or a team level framework like Scrum or whatever it is that you might be using. And then we looked at servant leaders versus traditional bosses. I think that it's really tough uh, to be able to become a servant leader. You have to be able to set ego aside. If you've read the book Good to Great, then you'll be aware of what they're talking about there. Even though Jim Collins doesn't use the concept of servant leader, he calls it a level 5 leader, but the description is still a servant leader. And I think the picture that I shared is pretty accurate. So, the application here is, how well do I communicate with other leaders, especially if I'm on the business side? How well do I communicate with the technology leaders? And if I'm on the technology side, am I really understanding what that business leader just said? I've sat in so many meetings down through the last 37 years where it was painfully clear that they were speaking two different languages. Then, as another follow up, as if you're a leader in the organization, you need to be questioning yourself and being, again, a little bit brutal. Am I the servant leader that I should be, that I need to be? And how do I measure my behavior and the impacts that it has on my coworkers, my teams, my peers, my bosses, everyone in a 360-degree view? And so if you're not measuring that, how do you know? So flow is one of the things that we use to measure that, and we have a lot of tools in our back pocket that we use to get to the heart of that.